Hello, everyone, and welcome to our session on insight challenges for medical affairs and why AI can help. It is so excited that we have so many of you here today. For those I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Scott, co-founder of Acceleration Point, and today we're going to talk about the challenges in insight generation and then how AI can help address those challenges. Throughout the entire session, we are here to answer your questions. So please use the question feature here in Zoom to post any questions that you have that you want us to address. And we will certainly try to get to as many of those as we can. So today, I am so thrilled to be sharing this time with Dave Harper from Sanofi. Dave is the Senior Field Medical Director for the cardiometabolic team, and I'm just so excited to get to have this really timely conversation around insights and then how AI can be used. So, Dave, would you love to introduce yourself? Just tell everybody a little bit around your background and your experience with Sanofi.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. I appreciate that. Yeah, as you mentioned, currently I'm the director of the cardiometabolic MSL team at Sanofi. I started my career as a pharmacist at the University of Utah, where I spent about 9 years working in cardiology and medicine before transferring to this team, actually. I've been here at Sanofi or precursors of Sanofi for over 20 years, working on the cardiometabolic field team. First, as an MSL for a lot of years. So I do have experience working with insight collection and entry and such as an MSL. But then I've been a director for a lot of years now, working on the other side, which is trying to find something useful with all those insights we have. So we'll talk a lot more about that. But that brings me to where I'm currently. Looking at the list of people here, it's fun to see a lot of friends and colleagues, and a special shout out to members of my current team who I appreciate you guys being here too.
Excellent. I am really excited to get to have this conversation. For everybody on the line, this is really going to be a discussion, a dialogue where I think it's timely because AI has been around for a long time, but it has changed so significantly over the last year and has become accessible to such a large audience that it's kind of taken a new form. One of the things that we're seeing is a lot of medical affairs team are in an experimentation phase where they are playing with AI. They're trying to understand how it could be used. And so we wanted to use today to really drill down into one use case, right? Because there's 1,000 things you could do with it. Today, we'll really focus on insights. And so maybe if we could just start before we get into solutions and what AI can do, let's start with insight generation and the challenges that we're seeing because it's amazing to me. You said it. We've been collecting insights for decades. Insights
Yeah,
is always such a critical part. If you say, what are the top 3 things that field medical does? One of those 3 is always generating insights and bringing it back to the organization.
absolutely.
But we continue to have challenges with it. We continue to hear the same stories. When I go to the Medical Affairs Professional Society, there's over 200 presentations on how to do insights better, but we're still challenged. Maybe we should just set the stage by what are some of those challenges that have continued to persevere that you're addressing now with AI?
Yeah, thanks, Scott. As you said, there are a lot of challenges related to insight generation, collection, collation, and analysis. I think those of us who've been working in pharma for a long time, as you said, we have been collecting insights for a long time. And it's an important part of what we do is getting feedback from those key opinion leaders about their thoughts on what's currently happening in practice. The challenges, there's obviously challenges on the front end, which you mentioned in terms of training up teams to be collecting good, actionable insights. So we have done a lot of training of our team over the years working on that part. But I think one standard challenge that we've all faced is we have these great teams of MSLs out there capturing and collecting these insights, putting them into various systems. I think different companies probably do it different ways. But the real challenge for me, and I think a lot of medical leadership, is how do you get these insights back out in a timely fashion, in a way that they truly can be actionable and meaningful to the team? I think I can speak to my experience. And first of all, I probably should have given a disclaimer. I have no special expertise in AI or anything like that. I'm just here talking about what our experience has been on our team. But it's something that we change how we do it pretty regularly. It seems every couple of years, we'll have somebody in a leadership position that wants to mix up how we do it. We'll set up teams of people to work on the insight process, figuring out how often do you try to pull data out of the system, who actually does it, and in what format, and how do you collate that and analyze it and then deliver it throughout the medical organization to help speak to future strategy and tactics. But that's for me, that was the big one that has been an ongoing challenge for a very long time.
Dave, maybe just for context, right? And again, for everybody on the line, we'll use terms interchangeably. Some people say it's an insight, some people say it's a data point, but like how much
Yeah.
insights data is your team collecting on a regular basis? Just generally.
Sometimes it's hard to quantify because we do it in different ways. We have organic insights, which are just data points that we put in. We also will put together structured surveys to try and capture insights and feedback on specific topics and things like that. If you look back, it varies by time of year and across time. But if we're analyzing a year's worth of data, we're talking about tens of thousands of data points easily.
Yeah.
And that's can be very hard to work through all that manually to try and find the what's really useful and meaningful in there.
Wow. Tens of thousands. Yeah. And I think that one of the things that I often will hear from field teams is that we do all this work and it disappears into the black hole, right? We keep submitting it, but we don't know what happened to it. We don't know if anybody ever read it. There was a recent McKinsey report that came out that said less than 1% had ever even been read. Why do you think most teams and up to this point have struggled to get that much data and to get their insights actually read and utilized within their organizations?
Yeah, well, like we've talked about, there are a lot of challenges. One is it's a big time commitment. We have to have people on the team that will go in there regularly and look at that. I'm fortunate to have a couple great team members right now who is doing that for us. But I can tell you that they're spending multiple hours a month sorting through all of this data, trying to group it into categories and topics and find out what are the most pressing issues, what are the current topics of interest. So the timing of it is one. The organization is tough too because it's figuring out who's going to do it, how often they're going to do it, and then how do you disseminate that out to the rest of the team. And typically, I'd say there is a timing issue. We may decide that, say, for the first quarter, we're going to look at all the insights for the first quarter, but maybe we start working on that in April. And by the time, we actually can put together all that data into a meaningful report and share that, it may be the end of May. So you're talking about an insight that might have been collected in early January, but no one is really even seeing it until 4 months later.
Got it. So some of the challenges I think I'm hearing in this. So one is that there's so much data, it takes a lot of time, right? And so you have
Yeah.
people who have to dedicate their time to pulling that insight out of systems, get it into spreadsheets usually, sort, tag, come up with reports.
Yeah.
And I don't
Exactly.
know about everybody else, but Dave, I'm sure at Sanofi it has to end up in PowerPoint or
First, it goes to Excel so that you can sort it and group it. And then
and
eventually it
then
works its
PowerPoint.
way to PowerPoint.
Okay, so one is the amount of time. I also heard you
Yes.
say that you had multiple sources of data. So you have both structured data, multiple choice type of survey type of
Yeah.
questions, but you also have free text, right? You have unstructured data. How do those relate to each other or like completely
Well,
separate?
they do, but you're right. There are challenges there. I think a number of years ago we started developing these structured surveys as a way to try to make it something that we can collate easier and try and get some useful information out of. I think we've leaned heavily on that. And typically we will report on the findings of our surveys. But a lot of times the organic insights that get put in, I think those are the ones that tend to fall into that black hole. So,
Got it. Okay, so it takes a lot of time to analyze. You've got structured and unstructured data. And then it sounds like, besides the amount of time that it takes to analyze, there's also this timing aspect of getting it
yeah.
when you need it. How has that been a challenge for you? Why is that something that's causing problems?
I just think to your point about the field team working hard to collect these and then they're waiting for months and they're not hearing that anything's changing. Doesn't seem like anyone in the home office maybe even know about some of these issues. So I think that time lag is a real factor for them.
Or and then something else you just said that I see a lot is that even when they do get reviewed, sometimes there's no communication back saying, "We heard you. Here's
Right.
what we're doing.
Yep.
Let's do that."
That's exactly true. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to get into ways that AI is helping you. I know that you've been using AI for a while now, but before we do, if everybody on the line could just pull up your chat window, just open up chat. And what is the biggest challenge that you're facing in insight generation right now? Just throw it in there so that we know, is it one of these so that we know to go deeper on it? Or are there other challenges that you're facing so we know where to take this conversation? Please drop it in that Q&A button. All right. So we have too much data for individuals and too little for LLMs. Love that. Closing the communication loop, right? Where did those even go? Have they been used? Have they been read? Oh, here's one. Dave, we talked about this last time we were together, right? The ability to look at recurrence of themes, right? I think a lot
Yep.
of reports that you were referencing are point in time, right?
Yep.
What did we hear last month? David,
Right.
you're saying time consuming, love it. And then also pulling out useful insights from extensive organic text. Yeah, Dave, I think the ones that we've seen, right? Some people will write a whole lot of text in there. And how are you going to be able to distill that down?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. So it looks like you're having a lot of the same limitations, right? Same thing with CRM limitations, right? Dave, I know that you've been collecting within your CRM, but you did have to do some supplementing in order to get that data back out.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Wonderful. Well, thanks for contributing that, everyone. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. You know what? This one's a really big one, Anjali. Regional participation and alignment. Dave, can you maybe just talk for just a moment on kind of the challenges being that you lead a US organization, but you're also trying to bring insights back to a global organization? How does that work for you?
Yeah. And speaking to regional differences, even within the United States, when the data's being collected as we have historically, it'll go into our CRM system. And then like we talked about, we pull it out generally into Excel to work with it. But if we want to find out any kind of regional differences, that's a manual sort. We have to look at who entered it and where that came from. And that is an extremely time consuming task.
Mhm. Got it. Thanks everyone for dropping in those questions. Yeah, I agree, Dave. When you have to start slicing and dicing by part of the country or part of the world, there's really two parts. One is making sure we're communicating to everyone what is important, what decisions are we trying to make, and hence why we need certain insights. But then also, once that data comes back in, how can we actually look at it by a regional difference, especially if everybody's pulling it out and putting it into their own summaries?
Yep,
Good.
exactly.
why don't we transition then to discussing AI? Before we jump into the ways AI has been helpful, Dave, why don't you walk everybody through your experience in starting the AI process?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. And maybe I'll even go back just a little bit further. And here at Sanofi, we've been working with Acceleration Point for quite a long time. I probably couldn't tell you exactly how long, but 5 years or more, I believe. And we're in on early iterations of Quello and using your platform to get a lot of the data points that we need in the field. And our teams are putting their insights into our CRM system. Your company is getting that data, reporting it back in Quello, which I mean, Quello itself has been extremely helpful for us for a number of years, looking at, we could go into it, a lot of different things that's helpful. But yeah, speaking to the AI experience, it wasn't that long ago that I was having a conversation, I think, with Eric on the phone, talking about some of the things we were doing. And he mentioned that they were wanting to beta test an AI system, the LCAI. And he told me that it was available. And I think myself and a couple of people on my team started playing around with it a little bit to see what it could do. And I think we were all pretty blown away by the power and ease of use. And I think Scott, I shared with you one story was that very first week. So I had just gotten access to it. I was on a company strategy call where we were talking about some recent trends and what was going on in practice. And one of the medical directors on the call asked a question about a new thing that we were starting to see in practice. And he wondered if the team had been hearing about it, if they'd been getting any insights and what it was they were hearing. And I'm on this call and I was like, oh, I wonder if LCII can help me. And so I quickly pulled it up and asked it a question. And literally within 2 minutes of him posing the question to me, I was able to come back and let him know exactly how many insights our team had put in regarding that issue and what the general topics were that were being talked about in the field. And as a strategy team, we were able to talk about it right then. It was the first time I can say in my career that we had real time answers to questions that we were having. And so there was no lag time at all. We were able to instantaneously talk about what the team was hearing. And I think it impacted where we went from there with it.
Wow. That it's such a great story and addresses so many of those challenges that you talked about regarding both how much time it takes to do the work, but also being able to get it timely and live. So maybe let's just unpack it a little bit because AI isn't actually new. AI's been around for a long time. It's just in a different version, a different iteration now. And if I look back at what you've had access to for the last, 4 or 5 years, there's been a version of AI, which is natural language processing, where it would tag, but
Mhm.
then you're still reporting on the tags, right? And
Right.
so it helps because when you use NLP, you can find topics really quick, but then you still have to go in and read like what was being said about these topics, right? And
Yep.
everybody pushed that as far as it could. But in this iteration of AI, it's this kind of more GPT large language model experience where once you've got that bunch of data together, you can ask it questions and have it summarized for you. Just tell us a little bit about how that works and how that was different than what you could have done 2 weeks prior.
Yeah. And again, I still consider myself a novice here. But like you said, like I mentioned, the ease of use. I can go in there and query it with things that make sense to me. I can ask it to summarize only insights that mention a certain thing. And I ask it to provide me what the top 5 topics are with specific examples of each.
Mm.
And so it'll do it. It is almost instantaneous. I get that summary report with those top topics ranked and specific examples. And then if I'm looking at the system right there on the right hand side, the specific citations are there. So I can see not only that there's a specific citation, I can see who the doctor is,
Mm.
where it's coming from, and read the actual thing that they reported.
Yeah, I think that's a big difference for medical affairs in general, right? We need to rely on accuracy, right? And so
Yeah.
there are still, while people are still learning to use these large language models, there's been stories of it making things up. There's stories of it
And I haven't
hallucinating.
seen that here.
And because you have the citation to be able to actually go, "Oh, okay,
Yep.
here's the summary, and here's what was summarized, and here's why the system believes it." I think that's an important thing specifically for medical affairs that they need to have.
Yeah. And it provides maybe additional credibility to the insight too, because I'll glance over at the citation and I'll see that it's from a top global opinion leader. And I know that person is well respected and what they're saying probably does reflect what a lot of folks are thinking.
Yeah. Going that direction is also another interesting use case. So we had a MSL start in a new territory, and they were getting ready for their first interaction with one of these thought leaders. And in other reporting, they could say, "Here's everything we've talked about," but they actually logged in and they went to LCAI in Quello and said, "I am meeting with this thought leader for the first time. What are the key beliefs they have on these topics?" And it was able to like instantaneously give a summary of here's what this thought leader's beliefs are on core topics so that they would know where to pick up from.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I hadn't even thought of an application like that, but that's great.
Yeah. So Dave, as a leader of the team, right, you've got now this visibility into everybody's insights. Have you had a chance to use AI to help with coaching and supporting the team?
Yeah, absolutely. And we talked earlier about some of the difficulties with historical data collection and analysis and the difficulties with doing regional analysis. But as part of this tool, I can easily use LCAI, but narrow the filter down
Mm.
to look at individual team members. And so I can look at what types of insights they're putting in and get a sense of how that compares with the overall team. And again, by doing that, I can also see regional differences. And so that does allow me to go back and talk with the individual MSLs. Maybe there were some who weren't getting any information about a certain topic. And I can kind of follow up with them and just double check if they had been hearing anything. And maybe they didn't even realize it was something worth putting in.
Absolutely. So, in a minute here, I'm going to ask people to submit questions they have about AI. But before we get into that, maybe just a couple of things for those on the line that are responsible for setting up AI within their organizations. There's a couple of lessons learned that reflect in some of what Dave was talking about. So, the first is there is a myth that you can put an entire world of data into AI and just ask it any question you want, right? And so part of what, Dave was explaining regarding being able to filter first is an important part. When you combine filters and say, "Hey, I don't wanna summarize the entire globe of data that I have. I wanna say, what are people saying about this topic? Now summarize it." Or, "I wanna know what's being, talked about by this doctor. Now summarize it."
Or another one for that I've used quite a bit is looking at various date ranges.
Yeah.
Some things I want to see, what have they been saying for the last year, but then maybe compare it to what have we heard in the last 3 months or
Love
month.
that. So that whole ability to do it both ways, filter your data and ask data, I think is really important. And then something else that's really fun is that whole coaching piece. You can actually use AI to help define the coaching. And there's really two ways to do this. So, one, if you filter your data down and say, hey, I'm looking at everything that my MSL had, I could put in the prompt and actually we have a button for it that says, tell me, give me coaching advice for this set of insights. And it can look at compliance. It can look at, is it got enough detail? Is there too much detail that's not needed? Is it related to a belief or is it, talking about something else? And one of the things that we're really excited about, we showed everybody this at MAPS, is that you can actually now do that at the point of submission, not just as an analyst at the end. So as you're putting in insights and you hit submit, AI can actually look at that submission before it ever even gets submitted to say, hey, what you wrote here doesn't appear to describe what the person believes or why. You might want to edit that. Or, hey, you gave us 4 paragraphs. Is this what you were saying? It's just and help to have the better data before it even comes in. Have you had a chance to look at that yet?
No, so I didn't think we had it available within Viva, which is our current system we're using. I know you mentioned it to me recently, and I'm excited about the opportunities with that. I've talked with my team about it too, and I think they are as well. I think that's going to be extremely useful.
So, Dave, you mentioned your team, and there's this fear. I've heard it from MSLs, I've heard it from medical directors, heard it from my 16-year-old that AI is going to take over our jobs. Is your team concerned about the use of AI in any way?
I haven't heard any of those kind of concerns. I certainly am not. I see AI as being an incredible resource in this way. So it's something that is going to make it easier for us to do what we needed to do anyway. It's going to just streamline the process, make it a lot more real time. And so from that standpoint, a lot more useful.
Yeah, I agree. Every time I get into those conversations, I'm like, AI is here to help a human be faster or smarter, right? It's not to live on its own and to go off. Fantastic. Hey, everybody, if you have questions about how AI addresses challenges with insights, let's take a look at these and we'll try to answer as many as we can. How much data, how many insights are needed for AI to learn so that queries result in meaningful examples? Okay. Spencer, thanks for the question. How much data and insight is needed for AI to learn? So there's a couple of different types of AI. You don't need a lot for it to summarize and for it to help do some of the things that Dave was talking about because it is interpreting what was being talked about on the fly. Now, to your point, though, sometimes you have a small team just starting a collection of insights. You don't need thousands for it to be useful. But if you only have 10 insights a month, I'd say go read them, right? I think that you don't need something to help you be more effective. But when you start getting into 100, 200 a month, and those start to be looked at over time versus just reporting what happened last month, then it can be much more useful. Dave, I don't know if you have anything to add on that question.
No, I totally agree with you though.
Great. Thanks, Spencer. What other questions does everybody have about the use of AI, how to set it up, how it's being used by the team? Please feel free to drop those into the Q&A. I was at the Medical Affairs Strategic Summit this week, and a question came up during one of the presentations about companies and how to get it approved within their organization. Do you have any advice for medical teams that want to get started with AI on how to engage their IT partners in order to make sure that they're aware of what you need in order to be successful?
I think at Sanofi, we were fortunate that a very senior member of our leadership team has a real interest in technology and digital solutions. And he's always been an early adopter and looking for technology like this. So he's been a huge proponent and was able to really sell it at his level. Um, I think, barring that, I think maybe trying to identify somebody in a leadership position who does have an interest in technology. Maybe they're the person who always has the new iPhone or what have you, and getting them involved. I think that can really be helpful in trying to sell it to the organization.
Excellent. We have a question here from Melody. Hi, Melody. So, are MSLs able to access the AI dashboard to ask questions, or is it just for management?
So I know that my team currently does have access. I was not sure if that was going to be a regular part of it or not, but yeah.
Yeah, so for us, most of our teams, we actually provide it all the way to every MSL. And I don't know if you've had any conversation with your MSLs about their experience with it and anything that they've been using it for.
Yeah, I don't think I have any specific examples to share, but I know that some of them have been using it.
Yeah. So most of our teams, we provide it all the way down to the MSLs. They're able to look for patterns and trends, and they're able to do two things with it that I really like. The first is within their territory, they can ask it questions around, hey, what are the trends and topics in my territory for my particular institution, a particular HCP. But then they also have a coaching button. Hey, give me some feedback on my insights. Let me know what I can be doing to make these insights more insightful. So I think that making sure that MSLs have the same tools that leadership has is important because you want to empower, right? We don't want to have this secret black box tool out over here that people don't understand. So thanks for the question. Let's go to this one. This is a fun one. Okay, Dave, this one's for you, right? Do you have
Okay.
any ideas or information on how AI may be helpful in suggesting or proposing actions based on insights that come in? What are your thoughts on that?
The quick reaction for me is that AI can identify what those like top topics are that people are talking about and the ones that people feel are important. And so by sharing those, that will give us ideas. And then again, I think you have the functionality in there to prompt ideas about possible things you can do with it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that there's two things. So the first is that a lot of teams are playing with this whole next best action for medical, right? Or digital assistant for
Hmm.
medical. And I do think that AI can help identify what those actions are. But there's really two levels of this. So the first is on a generic level, hey, if these are the things that somebody is asking questions about, what are the top educational opportunities or what are the top things that I should engage with somebody on? It can do really out of the box. I think that what the next step is that if you can teach the AI, two things. One, what materials, what tools support those things? It can be more specific, right? It could say, hey, you should use this piece of material, or hey, because they now really understand unmet need, the next topic might be clinical outcomes, right? And so the more that you can teach it, the more that it can be useful, but that would require some development of the AI so that it understands what you're trying to accomplish, not just summarizing what happens. All right, let's try this one. I'll take this one first. How do you test the accuracy of a Gen AI response? So a few moments ago, Dave said, "Yep, I'm seeing it as pretty accurate." And really, there's the way that you have to test for the accuracy of a response is to read it, right? You have to actually go and look. And what I find is that the first couple of times that somebody uses Gen AI They spend more time reading through what was the summary, why was it summarized, did it get the right things? And over time, you develop more confidence, right? You start to go, yep, okay, it's accurate. Or we make tweaks, right? So early on, it's really important to put your hands on the system, test it, push it a little bit, and then take the time to actually read the outputs and the citations so that you know that you got something accurate.
Yeah. And I think we're still early on in that process too. We actually are testing it more. And it's a lot of times it's because I mentioned it does share the actual citations right there as well. So
Mm,
you can easily refer back to what those citations were to see the accuracy.
absolutely. There's more questions coming in. This is fantastic. Let's take a look at let's take a look at this one. So Melody is asking around, can we use AI to help craft reporting so that it's focused on the goals and needs of various audiences? Yeah, that's fantastic. Before I jump into how AI can help, Dave, who are all the people that you share insights with?
Yeah. So for me, my team is working in a specific therapeutic area. So we have a strategy team that meets regularly, which includes medical directors, scientific directors, um, on up through through medical leadership. Depending on the meetings, we do sometimes share information with commercial or brand representatives as well, as appropriate.
Yes. Melody, for me, I think that when you have a clear list of different audiences, like Dave just listed, and you know what the goals and needs are of those audiences and are really explicit on those, then just like any other good reporting, you can ask better questions of the AI to get summaries that apply to them. And so one of the things that we can do in Quello as an example is you can actually build your own stories, right? So you can say, I'm crafting a report or story for my marketing audience. And I don't want every insight because some of them aren't appropriate necessarily to share. But if there's a set of topics, I can then you first use filters to make sure I'm getting the content that's appropriate to share, and then still use AI to summarize and say, hey, I'm sharing this with my marketing partners. What would they find interesting? Right. And so I think one of the things that is really interesting from a medical affairs perspective is that a lot of folks in medical affairs got to where they are from having really good answers all the time, right? They got great grades, they passed their tests, they got their gold stars, right? And we pride ourselves on that, right? Now we have to get really good at asking the right questions, right? Because the system will give us answers that we might not already have in our head, but only if we can ask it the right question. So that's a great example of crafting your question in a way so that you can say, hey, I want to share this with marketing. They care about this. So tell me in the insights stuff they care about. Love that.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying, Scott, about asking it the right questions, to me, that's probably the biggest thing right now is, figuring out exactly how and what you want to ask so that you can get that information that's, most appropriate in an actionable way.
Absolutely. Shikar, you're asking a really pertinent question right now around how can we ensure that Gen AI models produce fair and unbiased insights, especially in sensitive areas such as healthcare. And this is an area that people continue to experiment with and explore because there's so many variables from was there bias in the data that came in through did the interpretation of that data have bias built into it. What I would say on this one is that we have to continue to experiment with it. We have to check ourselves. We have to, just like we did on accuracy, we also have to read the insights as we find and monitor for it. I know that as we've worked with multiple organizations now, we're going through AI review committees and people are looking at the AI, and it's one of the things they're looking for. Right. So we're continuing to monitor it. And I think that there is some interesting things, specifically within the use case of AI for insights, because insights are typically written in a very matter of fact way. Dave, I don't know how many times I've read in your insights, like, Dr. Smith is over the moon with the most amazing, like, that's not
Yeah,
how we write, right?
exactly.
Like, so it's a really good use case to see, like, when it's stated as a fact, is it interpreting it that way?
Yeah.
Excellent. Everyone, I know we're at the end of our time. I really appreciate everybody joining in. And again, Dave, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your week. Take care, everybody.